Good evening. Maybe we should have a round table so everyone can come together. Welcome to our first town hall of 2018. We're happy to have you here. So you get to hear from our not so new anymore Public Works Director, Richard Johnson, who's going to tell you a bit about his mission and vision for the Public Works Department and some things that they're working on. And I think I've seen his presentation, he's done a great job. I did want to make a quick plug for, shameless plug, if you'll go to the next slide, Sean, or am I supposed to do it? For y'all to sign up for Everbridge, and I'm doing this for you, but also for people that are watching the live feed. There we go. We are going to schedule some training sign-ups at the Nick Center in the library to help people get signed up for all these alerts. I'm hearing today that a lot of people did not get the alerts from all the excitement we had downtown, and we definitely want you to get these updates as they happen in real time, which is one of the reasons that we started this whole system, and it's a great system. I get all of the alerts, and I love it. They'll come by email, text message, and or the app, just depending on how you like to get them. I get them always, so I don't miss anything. So I will. I'll just turn this over to Richard, and then there'll be some question and answer time at the end. So feel free to keep this a little bit informal if you're okay with that, Richard. If you have a question, you want to stop him along the way, you could even raise your hand. We don't have a huge group here, so I think that would work. Okay?
Thank you, Sherry Lee. It is a pleasure to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself for those that don't know it. I was just thinking on April 1st of this year, my family and I will celebrate 13 years of escaping Mobile and living on the Eastern Shore. So, it is, our community here is just a wonderful place to live. And I think sometimes when you come from somewhere else, you have a greater appreciation, and I try to remind myself never to forget just how great it is here on the Eastern Shore and in the city of Fairhope. I've been in public works since 2006. I started with Baldwin County Highway and Engineering Department, then had the distinguished pleasure to take over the helm of public works in the city of Daphne in 2010, and then had the opportunity to come serve you in the fall of 2017. My background, I am a registered professional civil engineer. My area of knowledge base and experience and practice is civil site, drainage, environmental. And I also started out many, many years ago as a structural engineer, so I have a unique perspective is that I hope I'm well-rounded and have a lot of skill sets that I can bring to the public works operation of the city of Fairhope. It's funny, I go on the radio and Mr. Laura DeBose there, the host, she was even confused, and I don't know how long she's been on the radio, but, that didn't realize that there is a distinction between public works and public utilities. Now, we're all housed in the same building. We interact a whole lot, but public works is a little different than public utilities. And your public works department here in Fairhope is structured as such. First of all, what most folks think of is streets drainage, and that's a big part, the right-of-way and everything that happens in it. And when we say streets, that's the signage, that's the road surface, that's the walkways, the sidewalks, the trails, the trimming of the street trees, the planting of the landscaping within those right-of-ways. So with that, and then drainage not only includes all that goes with the streets, but all that leaves the streets and goes through various systems to get to where its final destination. And here in Fairhope, it's just about almost an assured fact that everything eventually is getting to the bay. We've probably got a few watersheds out to the east of us that do end up in Fish River and that, but most of ours that we deal with mostly is flowing toward the bay. And as you know, between wherever that runoff is and where it's trying to get to, there's a whole lot of erodible soils, and that's an ongoing challenge. Something that's dear and near to our city here is our horticulture department. They take care of the general beautification, And that is everything from the raising and procurement of the flowering plants that you see in all the beds that get changed out on a quarterly basis, but that also includes our urban forest and a lot of other mundane things that you don't think about. The mowing, the weed eating, the edging, just the general landscape and lawn type care activities that have to go on. And then also horticulture takes care of our mosquito abatement program that we run in the warmer months. Had a lot of important responsibilities. The one that you probably don't recognize or understand or interact with that much as a citizen is our building maintenance. Think about all of the buildings, the facilities that the city of Fairhope owns, from the one that we're in right now to City Hall to Public Works to every bathroom and concession stand at every recreation field, the Nick Center. It goes on for quite a while, and we have a lot of buildings that we own that we have tenants in. For example, the library board is an independent entity of the city, but they're kind of the tenant, we're the landlord, and they get a real good deal from us. But we, as part of that role, we have to take care of this facility. And you know, and one of the first things I noticed is I'm curious about the visqueen and the duct tape up there on the ceiling, and I'm going to ask our building maintenance supervisor, what's exactly up with that, because that doesn't look real professional. Then also is mechanical maintenance. Think about the fleet of equipment that the city has to own to operate. That's from the smallest weed eater to the largest fire or garbage truck. And we do all that maintenance, a good bit of it in-house. Very few of it that we have to outsource. Some specialty items on fire trucks require certain maintenance that we can't do, but we do most of it in-house. So we run a complete shop that's very equivalent to what a car dealership would have, but our shop has to be able to handle the chainsaw and the very large garbage truck. Engineering administration, that's kind of, the engineering is kind of a new part of it. One of the goals of the mayor was to bring in some technical expertise to help alleviate the demand and need for outsourcing to consultant engineers for the smaller projects and things of that nature. I'll tell you today, I spent some time completing a bulkhead design that's going out on the streets for contractors to bid on, and in reality, that half a day that I may have spent on it probably was equivalent to about a $5,000 savings to the city. That's what we would have paid a consultant engineer to put together that plan set. Administration is just one of those things that has to go on. With the number of employees that we have, you have everything that comes with having employees, and that is you got to make sure they've clocked in on time and they've clocked out on time, and if they've had an error in their time card, you've got to deal with that. There's, you know, sick times and vacation and evaluations and everything that goes on with just the day-to-day business of a public works department. And then probably our biggest singular operation is our sanitation department. And it has many functions. Of course, we all know about garbage. That is those things that are produced in your household and in our commercial enterprises that have to be disposed of in a sanitary landfill. Then we have trash, and people sometimes intermix garbage and trash, but us in the business, we see a distinct difference. Trash is rubbish, vegetative debris, an old washing machine, did a little remodeling in your house and you tore out some sheetrock. That's trash. Those are things that either A, have some recycled components in it, such as vegetation that can be mulched and recycled into bedding material for landscaping, to your white goods, which are your old washer and dryer that we get into the scrap metal bin and actually gets a little bit of income back on it. And then those things that can't be recycled or reused, we are able to landfill trash in our C&D landfill that the city operates down on South Section Street. Then recycling, and I will tell you, coming into public works, sanitation was something I didn't have a background in when I got to Daphne 8 years ago, and it's probably been one of the most challenging and also enjoyable aspects of my job, because think about this, every day is Groundhog Day in sanitation. Meaning it doesn't matter what you accomplished yesterday or the day before, you have those customers that are due for their service that day, and your job is to take care of your customers. And then with recycling, it is really almost a complex game of how do we maximize the value and the processing of our recyclable goods. And it, in the 8 years I've been involved, I've seen recycle all over the place to where we were close to being neutral in revenue, meaning that the income was almost covering the expense, to the darkest days where we couldn't even get rid of the recycling, and we were even considering having to pay to put it in a landfill because no one would buy it. It's getting better today, but that is the challenge, and I enjoy that. And of course, as I mentioned, that we do operate our own C&D landfill. C&D stands for construction and demolition. Those are, we're allowed to landfill what they're considered inert material, and that is things that don't react with other things. So that can be vegetative, that can be old bricks, that can be shingles, things that are relatively stable when you landfill them. And also, many people don't know, we run our own transfer station, meaning that your household garbage doesn't go directly in the truck that picked it up to the sanitary landfill in Magnolia Springs. We actually bring it to our transfer station and we tip it onto the floor, and we have a much larger tractor trailer truck that when it is loaded, it takes that singular load to the landfill. And what that allows us to do is, one, we can service you with relatively smaller trucks, and we are saving that windshield time for that round trip to the landfill by being able to almost service the whole city in a given day by one cycle to the landfill. And those are our functions, and that's what we do. One of the things that the mayor has challenged the department heads is that she has told us what her vision is and what her key goals and objectives are, and we have been challenged as a department to start doing that same on a departmental level and set goals and objectives to attain those goals in order to reflect and achieve the overall mission of the city. And we did an exercise because before you can really do a strategic plan within a department is you got to ask yourself, what is your mission? What is your vision? And as I noted up there, this is a working copy, and I was going to share it with you because it's not official yet, but this is what the staff of your Public Works Department came up with, and if there's any bad grammar or editorial, that's all on me. I'm an engineer, that's not my strong suit, but I wanted to use the thoughts and things that your workers in Public Works came up. And we look at our mission. The City of Fairhope Public Works Department works daily to ensure a clean, beautiful, high-quality, safe, and resilient city by maintaining first-rate infrastructures, facilities, and equipment. Furthermore, we serve the city, a city that is pedestrian, cyclist, and multimodal friendly, and work to educate the public and our own employees on the importance of the stewardship of all the resources of our city. And our vision is Fairhope Public Works will strive to maintain the standards set by our city forefathers, keeping Fairhope the safe, friendly, and high quality of life community it has always been. We will be persistent in upholding high employee morale, earning the trust of our citizens, being accountable to all our stakeholders, delivering quality infrastructure, planning for growth, and matching the required city services. And I hope that that captures what we're trying to be about, because these were all words and things that those that have served this city for many years said, this is what we see as not only our mission, but our vision. And ultimately, we're going to present this to the City Council as a total package to hopefully have it codified and adopted as part of our strategic plan for public works. And you're kind of getting a little bit of a preview of that. How are we structured? Well, right above my name would be Mayor Wilson. I report directly to her as a director. And in our structure, we do have a director and assistant director. Arthur Beausarge, who's been with the city for 25 plus years, very capable, and he's a great assistant director in this sense. He has about worked in every sub-department in Public Works and just about every subcategory that you could think of, so he just brings that wealth of experience and knowledge and ability in there. And in our operating departments that I kind of laid out, we have Tim Bung, who's our mechanical maintenance supervisor, and he has 6 mechanical staff under him. Most of them are technicians. One of them kind of is a parts and administrative specialist. We have George Ladd, who's over our streets and drainage, as our supervisor. He has 14 individuals that serve, and they're broken up into a maintenance section and a construction section. If you've been down to the pier, you've been noticing a new dumpster enclosure being built. That's the construction section that is building that. Dale Linder is our sanitation supervisor. He has 22 employees between garbage, trash, recycle, landfill, and transfer. We have Paul Merchant, who is our horticulturist. He also is the supervisor of that department. He has 20 employees that work under him that do gardening, mowing, and the general landscaping of the city. And then our newest department, which was really just about a year ago, one man in a truck, is Lance Cabanas, who is our building maintenance supervisor. And we're moving custodial under him since that is a function, but he added a staff member, so it was 2 ending the year, and we're going to be able to add 1 more building technician that we're looking with either some HVAC or some plumbing mechanical skills, and get that staff up to a size that we can start getting ahead of our building maintenance. So that's 76 dedicated full-time employees that serve you on a daily basis. We also use some part-time employees, our gate attendants during the season down at the North Beach Park, and we also do use temp labor for certain times of the year. And I will just tell you, we do use state inmates. The workers' camp there in Loxley has a great program, and it's a way for them to pay off some of their debts to society. They're trustee level employees with the State Department of Corrections, and they do a good job for us. And you probably wouldn't, when you saw them out working, you would not know that they're from the state inmate camp. But we do use those to try to maximize our effectiveness on a day-to-day basis. The other thing is we queried our staff to ask, what are our values as your public works department? And these are words that came directly from our department and those that make it up. And one was problem solving, and I put that one first because ultimately that's what public works is supposed to do. Is our citizens have a problem, whether it comes in the form of a need, a complaint, whatever. There's a problem. The question is, can we solve the problem? And that's what, first and foremost, what we need to be doing. Community, and I like that too, because we're part of the community. We spend as much time, when you think about it, at work, serving as a public servant, as then we do with our own families, more than likely. 40 hours a week, plus the special events, and being part of that community and having pride in the success of our community is a big value of ours. This was interesting, having a sense of urgency. Sometimes public employees suffer from the stereotype of leaning on the shovel, maybe not attacking things with vigor and things of that nature. And that is a perception that we've got to win over with you. But we also got to bring a sense of urgency to our mission. I came from the private sector when I came into the public sector. And I had some public employees said, Richard, you need to slow down. You're making us look bad. And I asked myself, I said, I hope that I never become so complacent that I will accept that. Well, I'll get to it when I get to it. And I think that's having that sense of urgency is important. This was another one that was a true self-evaluation, that we had to care beyond a paycheck. And that's almost a direct quote that came from somebody that works public works. We got to care beyond a paycheck. That means is that if you're here just because it's a job, you're here for the wrong reasons. One, you got to have a public servant's heart. You've got to want to go help folks, and you've got to love and be passionate about what you're doing. And I'll tell you a little quick story about Paul Merchant. He can talk in such a way about how much he loves what he does with the plants and the trees and the flowers, that he had me convinced that he would probably do this job for free. I mean, I really feel like that's that caring beyond a paycheck attitude. That's a tough one, because I'm guilty of sometimes adopting a bad attitude, and I try to remind myself that that's not going to solve any problems. That's not going to help endorse a sense of community. And I've got to help lead those that report to me that yes, sometimes it doesn't turn out our way, and sometimes our day's not going well, or sometimes that same person keeps calling and you've told them 20 times that, that's Richard Peterson, not Richard Johnson, but they still call you because you answer the phone. You got to have that positive attitude. And finally, the value of ownership, meaning that is the one thing that I don't want to do as your public works director. I do not want to undertake a project or do an activity or support a program that I am not proud of what we delivered to you. And that's ownership, meaning that if my name is going to be on it, I want it to be done correctly and to be something that every one of you in the audience would say, that's how we should do it in Fairhope. And that's that part of ownership. What are some of our accomplishments and initiatives in our short time that I have been here? Probably the biggest, and I will tell you, you probably have been a victim of this. By the end of the year, we had some recycle trucks that were just rolling over dead. And the cost of repairing these 20-plus-year-old trucks were so high that it just was not responsible of me or the mayor to spend another penny on them, because we had 2 new ones that were ordered and were to be delivered sometime in January. And if you recall, we ended up with a couple pickup trucks with some landscape trailers and some plywood, and we had a jury-rigged recycle crew out there picking up recycling. But I will tell you, by the end of this year, really by the end of January, we can say that we've upgraded our solid waste fleet, our sanitation fleet, by 75%, meaning that 75% of our fleet now is less than 7 years old. And that is an incredible accomplishment. And I will tell you, we've got another trash and another garbage truck that has been approved and ordered. And so we're going to continue that modernization. And our goal this year for calendar year 2018 is that if you got a garbage service scheduled on Monday, we want to make sure that 95% of our customers get serviced on time and on schedule on the day that they're supposed to. And ultimately, our goal is going to be 100%. Now, I don't know if we can ever get there, and maybe 95 is a big reach, but when it comes to sanitation, every one of you are customers. You're our citizens first, but in this case, you're our customers. You're paying directly for a service, and we need to render that service on time, on schedule, every day that it's due. For 2018, the biggest challenge that I see internally on managing pedestrian and cycling infrastructure facilities is getting a plan. Because I will tell you, with sidewalks and bike trails and bike lanes, it seems to be a little bit pants on fire operation, or squeaky wheel, whatever you want to call it. And we've got quite a few projects in the works that are already funded, but what we need to do is, one, inventory all of our facilities, get them graphically mapped in GIS so that we can show you a map and say, here's what we got, here's what they are, and start looking at where are the logical links to start connecting, where are the areas that need upgrading, and adopt a comprehensive plan that says, as we go forward, here is our priorities as a city for these types of facilities, as opposed to going, well, let's see if we can get a grant out here and a grant here. It would be better to decide where we're trying to get to, what we're trying to complete, what we're trying to improve, and do it in a logical manner. And that's already started. We're inventorying what we have. We're graphically putting it into a database. And my goal is that by the end of this calendar year, we'll deliver to the City Council not only what we have inventoried and mapped and shown as existing, but a recommended plan to go forward. We've got a very active bicycle pedestrian advisory committee, and they're going to be stakeholders in helping develop that. But that is a big item to get tackled. Just as far as sidewalks, kind of tying in this, we got a pedestrian trail that starts on City 104 and goes out 98 to the north that's missing a link. And I'm promising you that that link is going to be completed within the next 30 days. We finally got the utility conflict issue resolved. The contractor has been cleared to start putting in piles. The bridge has been at a laid down yard on the east side of town for a couple of months now, but we're going to get that hopefully completed. End of March, maybe cutting it close, but I think 30 days is safe. We do have funding through a grant for a new sidewalk along County Road 13 from Sedgefield down to the Manley Road Soccer Complex. The surveying is done. 65% of the engineering is done. We got one little environmental permitting issue that we're dealing with the Corps of Engineers, because we're going to have to go off bridge on the crossing of Cowpen Creek as you're going down to Manley Road. But that will require a little nationwide permit, and we're going to do a pile-supported boardwalk structure across there for minimizing impacts. We do have funding and moving forward with sidewalks on County Road 44 in Morphe. They're funded. Design is underway. We finally got that contract out. And then one that I'm excited about, we have requested grant funding for a major sidewalk expansion that would pick up at Twin Beach and south section, go south to Old Battles back to the east to Greeno, and Greeno up to where the trail there on the east side ends at, I can't think of that subdivision, but it's about a quarter mile north on Greeno from Old Battles Road. And we're expecting that announcement on that ground here probably within the next 30 to 60 days. Sherry Lee and I, well, she did more than I did today on it, but we do have a comprehensive drainage study for Tatumville watershed, which is our first watershed study of hopefully many. We think we have 8 in the city that we're ultimately going to study. Has been initiated. You know, we're looking to drive data from this study, this model that will be one of the deliverables to show us what's going on in the watershed, how land use and future development is going to negatively impact it, and where are areas that we can do improvements using low impact development standards to give relief to those that are having negative impacts from flooding within that watershed. Under horticulture, I tell you what, it was my first Fairhope Arbor Day. It was a blast and it was very successful. And one of the things that I was required to do is to give a state of the city trees. I had never done that before, and I got real lucky because we had an opportunity from Auburn University. They did an urban forestry study, and there was some great information in there about the state of our trees, our urban forest. And we're going to take that data and hopefully put some of our strategic goals as part of that. Probably the most disturbing thing of the study is over 14% of our urban forest is invasive species. And I think that as your public works director, we've got to draw the line and say, okay, that's the baseline. Now how do we get that number to decrease? What kind of program can we put in place to eradicate and control those invasive species? Because they're not healthy to or for our urban forest. What are some of the strategic goals and objectives that we are working on and putting forth? Under building maintenance is actually establish a first-rate building maintenance department. Right now, I have a building maintenance supervisor that does not have an office. He works out of a cab of a pickup truck, but we're shoehorning him in out in our complex at Public Works and retrofitting some space so he actually has an office to work out of and to be able to do the necessary paperwork and administration that the supervisor has to do. And part of that first rate is developing a comprehensive preventative maintenance plan for this city. You know, every time a new air conditioning unit is put in, the clock starts ticking, meaning that there is a pretty known life cycle of that unit, you know, and helping those different department heads over those different buildings start strategically planning and budgeting for not only the preventive maintenance and service contracts on that equipment to get the maximum lifespan, but also know that when the new roof goes on, the clock starts ticking for when you're going to have to retrofit or rehabilitate that roof. And that's going to be a big part of that. On sanitation, I already mentioned on-time and on-schedule service performance. Those are going to be metrics that I'm interested in. How did we do today? Did we get our customers taken care of? Did we miss anybody? If we did miss them, what was the cause of us, that driver, to miss that section or whatever? And to really evaluate and address. Robust and a sustainable recycle program. We have had an opportunity that we have taken advantage of. Emerald Coast Utility Authorities over in Escambia County, Florida, invested heavily into a clean MRF, which is a process that can take a mixed stream recycle that's clean, it's not mixed with any household garbage, and pull all the different products, separate them, and recycle them. And they are willing to pay us a pretty good price per ton for a mixed stream. And our challenge is that the problem is they're willing to pay it if we deliver it. So we're working on options. Right now on Wednesdays, which is the non-garbage day for most of the residents in the city, we're using our largest garbage trucks. We clean them out, we load them up with mixed recycle, and we use those trucks to ferry that material over there. Now I will tell you right now, the calculus on it is for every ton that we sell for $15, we spent just about that much money to get it there and get the truck back. So right now, it is not profitable, but it is making sure that material is getting into the recycle stream. And understand with recycle, every ton of recycle starts life worth $30 before we do anything with it, because that's what we would pay to put it in the landfill. So it already has a value before we ever take receipt of it. Again, fleet upgrades. Why is that important? Its ability to give you the service when you need. Downtime on a truck. Understand, when a truck goes down, the route doesn't go away. We still have to service that. So that leads to overtime cost. That leads to morale problems. That leads to a whole bunch of issues. But when that truck is newer and dependable, then we stay on schedule, we stay on budget, we stay on route. Mechanical maintenance. We are just about to roll out a pretty comprehensive work order and tracking software that's part of a bigger package within the city that's going to allow us to do better with our fleet maintenance and management. Ability to, you know how a lot of the dealerships now will send you reminders when it's time for oil changes and things like that. Well, we'll be able to do that with internally to make sure that oil's getting changed in trucks, brakes are getting changed, things that are normals and things of that. Again, a robust preventative maintenance program. And then the biggest thing is our technical training of our technicians. The problem is that new vehicles, whether they're garbage trucks or even bulldozers, have more and more complex technology part of it. And we've got to make sure our folks are getting trained on how to interact and work on equipment that has that technology. Streets and drainage. Got a lot of challenges out there. One is we've got an obligation to bring our infrastructure into ADA compliance. And some of it is not by anybody's fault. Just for example, walking here, I parked over on Bancroft and walked across, and one little piece of sidewalk is up about 1.25 inches, okay? It just, a root or something just decided to make one go down, one go up. It just happens. But that's an ADA compliance issue. That's a trip hazard. And, but we've got a lot of sidewalks that were built back in the day, that were built with the best knowledge and technology at that time, but they don't meet ADA compliant. And so one is a vigorous program to not only retrofit our existing, but make sure that everything that we're building going forward is in full ADA compliance. Going through a exhaustive road evaluation and a systematic resurfacing plan. That is that we're going to get out there, catalog every road, give it a score and condition, and also prioritize it based upon its use. For example, a road like County Road 13 that may have 13,000 cars a day on it, and a little cul-de-sac that serves 4 houses. Well, if one is in bad shape and so is the other, the road that's serving 13,000 cars a day has a higher priority, a high function, and that's one part of the evaluation, not only its condition, but its use. And having a systematic plan, because the reality of it is is a road, a typical average road at best is a 20-year proposition between resurfacings. So that means we should be doing resurfacing 5% of our roads every year to stay on that schedule. And then identify and address drainage hotspots. This is probably the number one most persistent issue that we deal with on a day-to-day basis in public works. Identifying the hotspots hadn't been very difficult because folks will point them out to you very quickly. Addressing them is a whole nother set of challenges because, one, as public works, we are ruled by some very strict guidelines, meaning that we work within the public domain, meaning that the drainage in the right-of-ways and easements possessed by the cities and public lands, yes, we have a responsibility to address and maintain, but there's a lot of drainage that is in private developments that are causing a public nuisance, but we do not have the ability to spend your taxpayer dollars to address a problem that is not in the public realm. And then here's the other issue. Last year, a couple of weather stations near here, one of them in Silver Hill, recorded 97 inches of rainfall last year. But we were normally average is about 60, 65. The average for last year in Baldwin County was in excess of 77 inches, okay? So that's a lot of rain. And we deal with a fine line between a drainage inconvenience and a drainage problem. And I will tell you where I live, and I put some drainage in my backyard because I had to, but when it rains like it sometimes rains, the kids could kayak around the house. Now here's the good news is after the rain stops and after enough time, that water's all gone, and after a day of sunshine, the yard's not squishy. But that's a drainage inconvenience. That's just part of the drainage system in the lot and the subdivision that I live in. We have a lot of citizens that when they see water standing in their yard right after it has rained 7 inches in 3 hours, they want us to come fix that. There's not a fix for that. That's just kind of a fact of life. Now, if a day later I come and there's still 3 or 4 inches of water standing somewhere, there may be an underlying problem. But if immediately during and after the storm event there's water in your yard, that's an inconvenience, but it's not necessarily a drainage problem. And I think us that lived here for a long time, we've seen water standing in places a lot of times when it rains like that. Horticulture, Paul has a vision to improve our greenhouses as an overall facility and the growing process. Because here's our biggest challenge. We keep adding areas that we put annuals and perennials in, but we have to add greenhouse capacity to do the same. And I learned a kind of interesting lesson this year. We got into a bind because normally we have a mild enough period of time in that maybe late January, February, where we don't have to protect plants from freezing. And this year, we had a bunch of severe cold weather. We had some very, very hard freezes, and we didn't have enough space to keep the plants protected because normally we would propagate them outside the building footprint of the greenhouse. Now next year, it may average 7 degrees during January. It won't be a problem, but this year it definitely didn't do that. Our urban forest, again, invasive species control and eradication plan and how we're going to go about addressing that. And then, the mayor really wants us to look at not only are we being innovative in our design and plantings of our annuals and perennials, or what we doing is resilient. Can we keep it at the level that it needs to be and also advance it to the next level? And that's going to be a kind of a soul searching and looking at a possibility of having outside consultants help us with that. As far as administrative and engineering, one of the toughest challenges that we have is our city, I'll just be honest with you, has created a procurement process that Rube Goldberg would be proud of. Okay, it has so many, you do this and then you got to go over and do this and then you got to go backwards and do that. And the problem is it has never been scaled, meaning whether you need just a little bitty unique item or a great big one, the little bitty one takes as many steps as the great big one. It does not make sense. And I'll tell you, public bid law very clearly states that things under $15,000 are treated differently than things over $15,000, and then they have a $50,000 threshold, and then a $500,000, and the bigger it gets, the more steps you have to take. And my goal is to really work with our finance and treasurer to simplify and streamline the procurement procedures that involve public works. Because between us and the public utilities, we are the spenders. We are constantly having to initiate projects and things of that nature. And I will tell you, we're not serving you well because we get hung up to going through a lot of bureaucracy to do something as simple as order some pipe. And that makes no sense. And we got to be smarter with your money and the time that it takes to deliver on our public works projects and improvements. Another thing is we've got to enhance our in-house project management and construction engineering inspection. We don't have anybody in public works that is out there in the public right-of-way inspecting and staying on top of the work of others that use our right-of-way. We are constantly chasing our tail with MediaCom or AT&T, who did a bore that went bad and they pushed up a section of road, and then we got to figure out who did it. Now we got to get them to come back and fix it. We got to be able to get on top of that. And secondly, we're, as Richard Peterson and myself, are producing more and more engineering products in-house that result in a project. We got to have somebody who also can be out in the field making sure that contractor is following the plans, verifying work completed, quantities and things of that nature. And that's just going to be something we're going to have to work toward. And then the other thing is that my goal is in public works, we're going to practice what the city preaches, meaning that whenever we look at a problem, can we use a low impact development methodology to solve that problem? I'll give you an example. There is a large lot on the west side of the Baptist Church, right off of Section Street, that they park in. And on the right-of-way, there was holding water, and it had become a terrible mud hole. We actually put in 2 small bioretention swells. The water is gone, the mud hole's gone. The church paid for some gravel to put a parking apron to show where their members should pull in, and we solved the problem without putting any water down the hill on anybody else, or without losing sediment or erosion, and we did it in a very low impact, very soft environmental footprint way. And believe it or not, it was probably a cheaper solution than trying to put pipe in the ground and take it somewhere else. So that's one of the things that we're going to incorporate in everything that we do. Is we're at least going to challenge ourselves, is there a way that we can do it that is environmentally sensitive, that is environmentally responsible and practical and feasible? Because we're making our developers do that through our development code, we should be practicing what we preach. So my summary is, first of all, we're here to serve you. And I will go ahead and self-report and self-admit sometimes we fail, okay? And hopefully we learn from them failures and find ways to correct it. I'm a big believer that customer service is job one. And sometimes we fail at that too, okay? Because sometimes we forget that that person that calls, no matter how small their problem is, that's the most important problem that they have that day. And I will give you an example. There's a martin birdhouse that has fallen off the pole into the bay. Now, that's one of those things is that, it's easy to go, hey guys, when we get around to it, we probably need to get that fixed. But there was a citizen that was very concerned because this is the time of year that the martins are dating and they're looking for a place to reside, to have their families, and she was worried about that birdhouse. And you know what? It's a very small task. It's not really that important of a task, but if we can get that house cleaned and put back on that pole in a short order, we've served that citizen well and we solved that problem. And sometimes it's the little things that add up to be big things. I want to challenge you that we touch every aspect of this city. I want to challenge you to go on patrol. Every time you're out and about, look for the public works vehicles, the white trucks, the guys planting flowers, the solid waste trucks, the big knuckle boom with the claw on it, whoever it is. And you cannot go through this city on any given time during the workday and not encounter a public works person out serving you. At the Arts and Crafts Festival this weekend, there will be employees here from basically sun up to sundown, all 3 days, making sure the garbage cans are emptied, making sure the barricades don't get pushed out of the way, doing whatever it takes to make sure the event is special. We are part of the community. We want to serve you. We want to serve you well. We're going to make mistakes. We're hopefully going to grow from those mistakes. And I want you to think about the greatest challenge that we face. And we all know this, Fairhope is growing. Right now, Dale Linder, the solid waste supervisor, every day he comes to work, he has at least one new customer than the day before. We built 397 single-family homes in the calendar year 2017. When a building permit is pulled, we pretty much know about 6 to 9 months later we're going to have a new customer. And that is a daunting challenge because you're never, ever going to catch up if growth is faster than the growth of the services that you can render. But it's a challenge. We're up to it, and we realize that it's what we do, and it's because of you as citizens and this city that has done such a good job that's made people want to come live here. And it is a great, great place to live. And finally, the biggest thing that I want is the citizens to, one, that we earned your trust. Well, we got to do that. And we want your buy-in and support. Your input is important. Your involvement is important. And it's sad that I almost know everybody in the room because I know you are engaged and involved citizens. I tend to be positive and think of all those that are not here is that they're just so happy with Fairhope they have no reason to come to a meeting to ask a question or to complain about anything. And I hope that is truly the case, but I thank you for your engagement and your involvement. And I'm now here to answer any questions that you have. And my IT person says the only rule is if you want to ask a question, you got to walk up to the microphone because we're live and on tape. So, any questions? Oh, come on, somebody has something.
I'll give you one to see if we can warm things up a little bit. The bridge on State Highway 98, US Highway 98, over the Fly Creek, it has, as long as I've lived here, been classified as in unsatisfactory condition. It's way overdue for being replaced. Now you're going to put a pedestrian bridge right alongside it, and I'm wondering what's going to happen to the pedestrian bridge when it's time to remove and replace the bridge on 98.
Well, the one good news is the pedestrian bridge is a completely standalone, self-supported, and it is approximately 18 to 20 feet off the face of those box culverts that make up that bridge crossing. Again, ALDOT knows the condition of every one of our bridges because we have to enter into their bridge inventory. I do never get the inverse of that. I do not know what that series of box culverts, and just so you know, box culverts are the big square concrete boxes that go under roads, and if you have enough of them together that make 20 feet of crossing, they classify it as a bridge. In the case of Fly Creek, I think it's 5 of them, and they're at least 8 foot by 8 foot, and they may be bigger than that. So effective crossing is over 40 feet. Box culverts are problematic. They tend to have bad issues on the outfall side or the downstream side where they tend to have scour and things of that nature. I was not aware of that bridge had some limited capacity or had been established as such, but I'll be glad to find that out. The good news is that pedestrian bridge was approved and reviewed by ALDOT. So if they have to do some work on their bridge that has some requirement for them to relocate or reestablish the pedestrian bridge, that would be their responsibility in the future. Hopefully they've looked ahead and saw our plans and said, okay, we see no conflict that one can be done without the other. But I'm not aware of any immediate issues with that crossing, but but that is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Transportation with the state. Anybody else? Oh.
So we're going to just take one more from social media.
Sure.
This one says, interesting presentation. I hope that they will soon start to take care that more people recycle, because at this moment only a minority recycles. The people that don't recycle probably don't realize that they increase the landfill dumping, which is rather expensive for the city, for all people in Fairhope, and including the ones who are already religiously recycling. Can you speak to that?
First, I'm going to give that an amen, because I'm a recycler. I'm the one at the house that digs through the garbage and then lectures who threw this in here. I mean, and the only thing I've given up on is I don't care how much hot water you use, you cannot get the slime out of a peanut butter plastic jar. I've just finally had to give up on that. That's the one metric that I don't have here yet, and that is what is our participation rate. We were in Daphne, where on my last location, we were starting to do some sampling, and it was not necessarily very mathematically intricate sampling, but what we were doing, we were picking neighborhoods, and we were actually having the driver click who was recycling, and we did that same route for a period of time and came up with an average that 66% of the houses in this area recycled. And then we went other places to see if there was a socioeconomic. Did people who live in more expensive houses have a higher rate of recycling to those that live in maybe lesser expensive housing? And we were starting to collect some data because, we want to know how we're doing. I will tell you, if we could ever get to 100% participation in recycling, you would see a flip-flop of garbage and recycling, meaning there would probably be 2 garbage trucks and 8 recycle trucks. Because if you really look in a household garbage stream, there's a lot of material in there that can be recycled. And I'll give you my standard pitch, and it usually doesn't go over real well, but if you like wine, if you like beer, I ask you to drink your wine from a box and your beer from a can. Because I will tell you, glass is a tough product to deal with and to recycle. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but less than 40% recycling in Fairhope.
That's surprisingly low to me. Generally in communities like the Eastern Shore is comprised of, there's a heavy social engagement, there's a social awareness, the folks, and generally, we should be in that 60 to 66% range. And we may need to take some metrics just to see how we're doing. That's one thing that I have not spent much time in. But I do have a pretty good, I know what our tonnage is, and I know what our rough population and customers number is, and I think that tonnage is a little low based upon the customers. And some of that's just doing a better job of education. One of the things that I'm used to doing is going into the schools and doing programs, because I will tell you, sometimes you can get to the parents through their children. And if you get the kids all excited about recycling, they can kind of shame their parents into being a little bit more recycle-minded. Any other questions?
Over the past decade or so, the recycling rate has varied between 35 and 45%, up and down a little bit. The business about trees and so on. Trees are extremely valuable. We've been designated as a tree city recently. In our tree ordinance, we exclude the trees, including very large, what might be thought of as treasured trees, from any control by the local government. That's a bit of an unusual situation. I think it's more typical in the nation that the exceptional trees are protected. Here, that's a bit of an issue for us. The trees are very important for the sense of our community. They're a real important factor. That's an issue which we probably ought to figure out how to address. Do you have any particular thoughts on how we might approach getting some control over important trees on private property?
I think that's one of the most tough issues to deal with. Private property rights are one of those kind of cherished American kind of things. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Just so you right now is that we basically, our tree ordinance is completely silent on single-family residential, meaning that any lot that is zoned in the city, any piece of land that is zoned single-family residential, which means that if you owned it, you can come into the building permit and request a building permit to build the house of your dreams. And if you want to bulldoze the whole lot, maybe you don't like trees, or where the beautiful, majestic heritage live oak is right where your pool is supposed to go, you can remove all those trees, and our tree ordinance is silent. Now, the city council and those that made that decision, that was a consideration at that time. The good news is that at least in everything else that's going to be developed is usually going to come through a process of either a site plan, a multiple occupancy, a subdivision, or whatever. Now, I will tell you, there is logic that has to be applied to when you're building roads and you're trying to maximize the land for the lots that you want to generate, and sometimes beautiful trees are just in the absolute wrong place that they can be for everything to work. And yes, the Planning Commission can review and allow those trees to be removed, but the good news is that there is a mitigation component in the tree ordinance that you will be assessed to plant a multiple of the diameter of that tree that was lost someplace else in that development. Now, granted, 15 4-inch live oaks does not equal the majesty of a 32 or 38 or 48-inch diameter live oak, but one day they will. So I don't have a ready answer on that. I will tell you, in administering the tree ordinance, in my time in public works, both in Daphne and now here, I have cajoled, I have talked people into keeping trees that they wanted to cut down. And sometimes I've recognized that there is no way that they could have the full enjoyment and use of their property as they see fit without the removal of that tree. So I don't have a good answer, and I will tell you that if we try to go too far, I will guarantee you it could end up in the courts and we'll lose, and we may lose what ground that we have made to this point in time to try to effectively make trees an important consideration of development and preservation of those trees in that development. I don't have a good answer. I'm astonished that home builders sometimes cut down trees that don't need to be removed, and they don't have the realization that that tree adds value to that house if it was there, because people like houses with trees in the yard. And moving into a subdivision that was a bean field, and I've spent 13 years planting trees, I finally got some shade in my yard in a few areas after 13 years of growth. The trees make a difference. So some of it's going to be public outreach. Some of it's going to be judicious use of codes and ordinances within reason, because you just can't, just because someone owns a piece of property that has a spectacular species or variety or size of tree, you can't tell them that they can't use their property for the intended purpose in which they own it and have maintained it. You can't. It's just again, it gets into whole kind of constitutional issues, and it becomes a taking and things of that nature, and the courts generally don't like those things. But being judicious and making sure that we are locating trees that are being planted as part of development as street trees and in places where they can enjoy protections and care, that's smart planning, that's smart growth. And trying to encourage developers when the opportunity affords itself to preserve the tree and having mechanisms in that tree to be protective during construction has benefited a lot of developers. In hindsight, they may have thought it was a lot of extra energy, but it added value to the development in the end. And I think you got to keep approaching it that way, and you got to be very, very conscientious of that there's a fine line. And I don't have the ultimate answer. I mean, I love trees, but I also realize that sometimes they do have to be cut down. The biggest phenomenon that we're seeing is insurance companies now come by your home and inspect, and they're looking for trees that are a certain distance away from the house, and they will send you a letter now saying you have 2 trees you have to remove in order for us to maintain insurance on your property. Now, how do we as a city say you can't cut those trees down in order to keep your insurance? Those are realities that we deal with, and we've got to just be practical in how we manage that. I think we have a relatively strong tree ordinance when you look across the county as a whole. Is it perfect? No. Could it be better? Yes. Are there going to be just as many people who thinks it doesn't go far enough as those that think it goes too far? Probably yes. And if you have half that hate it and half that love it, you're probably about where you're supposed to be. Anybody else?
Ben Smith, 217 South Mobile Street.
And he is one of the people I failed in my customer service.
Now, I was not going to bring that up and will not bring that up.
Well, I'm going to
What I am
resolve that
here-
issue.
I've kind of resolved it myself. But what I really wanted to say, Richard, is that I walk the bayfront an awful lot, from the Duck Pond all the way down to Nelson Road. And I see a lot of people walk, run, push their strollers, ride their bicycles up and down that area a lot. And I really appreciate the work that has been done by the Public Works Department, especially a gentleman by the name of Odom. He cuts that grass so right every time, picks up the trash, and I see him doing that work. I mean, rain, shine, it doesn't matter. But I really want to show you and the rest of the city, council, mayor, Public Works Department really, is that the piers that you have just repaired are in excellent condition. They look good. I've walked on every one of them. I've watched them do the work. I watched the guys. They worked hard. They got the job done, and I appreciate that. And they will be used. Of course, some of them probably need some shade.
I've heard you, and I may need your help Thursday night because I'm going to get my butt chewed because I went a little over on that project, but they did turn out nice, I'll tell you. So, okay. Anybody else?
The matter of the construction and demolition landfill. The C&D landfill, sometime in the last decade, was given a bit of an extension of its life. We were able to take it up, I think, another 20 feet in height. But I imagine that by now, a lot of that capacity has been used up. So there's probably a rather limited capacity left in that landfill. And when we no longer can use it, there's going to be a big premium on disposing of that material. Probably have to take it to the county landfill or something and pay a tipping fee for it. Do you have a vision for handling that problem yet, by any chance?
Well, an inkling of a concept. We just are finishing up a renewal for 5 years on the current permit, and you're right. At current capacity, the best we can hope for is about 13 years, but at our growth rate, that probably is realistically closer to 9 years before we're topped out in that. As you know, the city at some point in time bought some additional property that is to the east of the current landfill. We have sat down with ADM and had at least an honest conversation about a major modification on that permit to be able to use that area that is to the east and expand the footprint of the current permitted site to regain some capacity. I will tell you, in that area we are doing a little bit of taking some sand and clay borrow out of there because it's got some real nice material. We are able to put inert material, tree limbs, things of that nature in there. That would be the process, but I will tell you the biggest challenge with the major modification, the process is just like a brand new landfill permit. You have to go through a public hearing process. Every surrounding property owner has to be engaged and have comment and ability to basically say yay or nay. And reality is that if one or two are just adamantly against it, the chances of success are probably pretty minimal. Now, would we have an opportunity to say, listen, we're not proposing to do anything that we haven't already been doing. It's just an expansion. And again, with the new 8M rules, our buffers would have to be defined and set, which they're not today because we're under a permit that's been around for 25 years. Could we sell it? Yeah, we're gonna have to investigate that, and we're gonna probably have to start that process in about 4 years, because if we think that our capacity would not survive another 5-year renewal, we've got to either attempt to do a major modification and get permitted to expand that, or like you say, we'll eventually have to close that facility out. And then two things are problematic. One, we're going to go to the county and we're going to pay them, and right now the rate is $18 a ton at McBride, which is in Loxley, and then we have to transport that. So all of a sudden, every time that knuckle boom truck is full of material, it's got to now make a two-way trip there and back to Loxley to McBride and come back. So not only are we going to instantly lose capacity in our system because there's going to be about a 45 to an hour round trip windshield time that we lose on every cycle of that truck, and knuckle boom trucks can cycle 3 or 4 times in a day. So all of a sudden you start saying, well, it's 4 cycles at an hour apiece. You're effectively getting 4 hours of out on the route picking up debris. So that's going to be a challenge, and frankly, there's not going to be an opportunity to find a brand new virgin site somewhere within our jurisdiction to establish a brand new landfill. That just doesn't happen. It has to be a site that was already damaged or impacted, like an old dirt pit or something of that nature. And there may be one out there I'm not aware of, but that's going to be a challenge. And again, what that usually results in is all of a sudden there's a limitation on volume. The city of Daphne was no more than 15 cubic feet in any given week. And our example was if the pile was bigger than what a box of washing machine or dryer came in, that was more than 15 cubic feet. And it could ultimately lead to higher cost in the monthly solid waste fees, which we would love to try to keep that reined in. Anybody else? We're on a roll, come on.
There's an idea that local governments or communities have a tendency to invest in things that are sort of in the upside of the community, and they tend to neglect the downside of the community with their investments. That does a real disservice to the people that are having a hard time. When we take a look at issues like the development of sidewalks, is that a factor in our giving of priorities to what project is next? So, for example, do we consider that the sidewalk is going to help people that don't necessarily have a car or some way of getting to work to be able to reach work more easily and more cost efficiently, and help them out in their lives? Is that part of our thinking?
I think it has to be a component of it. Here's the good news. Every new development that's being built has sidewalks, so we're not worried. Those get taken care of. That's part of our development code. So our greatest challenge is all the existing roadways, the old neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks. And I will tell you what my vision is I am not necessarily convinced that sidewalks are ever going to really lead to a great reduction of use of the roadway. We tend to like our cars. It does help in certain areas. But the one thing I know about a sidewalk, if you will build one, they will come and they will use it. Most people in neighborhoods walk recreationally. They like just to get out and walk around the block or take the dog out or whatever. They're not necessarily using it to get someplace. They're using it because it's a good thing to do. It's health, it's fitness, and it's enjoyment. So I will tell you my vision is every street that has a residential house on it in Fairhope should have a sidewalk, at least on one side as a minimum. Hopefully both sides as a maximum. Now, how do we get to that? That's the visionary thing. What are the higher priorities? You know, sidewalk links that connect schools to communities, neighborhoods, those are good investments. They get used and they may reduce traffic, because if we can get parents to walk with their kids to school, that's one less car in the drop-off line. Fairhope is unique. It has a lot of opportunity for people to live and work in the same community. There is a lot of employment that happens in our central business district, and hopefully a lot of those people get to live within that transect of walkability. And there is opportunities if we make it as easy as possible, as safe as possible, that it could have happen. Unfortunately, if we really look at the statistics on the Eastern Shore, probably somewhere around 80% or higher, and I think the NPO did this study, 80% or higher of the working adults have to get in their car and leave the community in which they live to go to work. That's the reality. And part of it is the Eastern Shore is a great bedroom community. You know, a lot of folks live here who work elsewhere because this is a great place to live. So they're not going to walk to work because they may work in Pensacola or Mobile or something like that. But if we can make sure that those sidewalks are developed for health and recreation and general welfare of the public, and for the occasional person that may use it as opposed to using a commuter vehicle, that's a great thing. I'm a sidewalk guy. I like building sidewalks, and I have never built one that was a waste of any money or a waste of any effort, because as soon as you build it, somebody will walk on it. Well, I sure do thank you, and you may be small in size, but you were large in your engagement and questioning, so thank you.